Hey everybody, my name is Eric Rousseau. I am here with the cast and crew from the Second Coming of John Cooper, which is playing at the Comedy Film Festival in Austin, Texas. Is playing on Saturday, April 26th at 7:45 p.m. at the Galaxy Highland Theater. Kind of gonna go around, introduce everybody. So to start off, I'd love to first throw it to Kevin Kraft, the writer-director, to not only tell us a little bit about himself, but give us a little synopsis of the movie.
Right on. Thank you for having me. So, The Second Coming of John Cooper is a mockumentary about a fictional celebrity who was on top of the world, had everything going for him, and just sort of blew it, partied away his chances, disappeared from the public eye, got himself canceled, what have you. And then a documentary crew finds him living on the couch of his biggest fan, and they sort of catalog all of his harebrained ideas to reinvent himself and get himself back on top.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And you wrote and directed this movie, which were there's so many questions I have about that. But you mentioned the couch that John Cooper ends up on, so I'm going to throw it over to Trevor. This is your couch, Clint's couch. Trevor Goober, nice to have you here today.
Yeah, thank you for having us. It is, in fact, my couch. It's a super fun mockumentary, so it's really just me playing myself as I house the wonderful Lane Compton on a house that I pretended was mine. That's how movies work. Yeah.
Okay, so Trevor, one of the ever-going kind of issues throughout the movie arises with your love interest, um, Clint's love interest, Jessa, who is played by Alana Kohanchi. Alana, tell us a little bit about this character. Tell us about how you got involved.
Yeah. So Jessa is described as sort of the voice of reason or the voice of the audience of the movie, right? Because it's a mockumentary. And I think that that's an excellent description of her. Like, it's just like chaos is all around. And then Jessa is the only one who's like, hello, like, does nobody else see that this is all like cuckoo pants? So she, I think that from what people who watched the movie said, I think she's sort of like a little bit of relief from all the craziness that's going on. And people are like, yes, like she said exactly what I was thinking, which is all, of course, credit to Kevin and his brilliant writing. But yeah, that's how I would describe Jessa. She's like the normal one. And how I got involved was nothing special. I just auditioned and then luckily got cast.
And leading the cast here, John Cooper himself. We're joined by Lane Compton. Lane, you really do an amazing job playing this character who is so tough. Who it's You just like open up the vulnerability of this character. It's somebody that we're frustrated with at times, that we love at times. Tell us a little bit about the experience of playing the titular character, John Cooper.
Yeah, it was a wild ride for sure. Thank you for all the nice things you said, because I think there's a lot of not nice things you can find about John and his wildness and all the antics that he comes up with. But at the heart of it, from the very beginning, talking to Kevin, we wanted to develop a real person, right? There's a lot of places that we can go once we ground it in truth, and that was the goal. Even as far out as some of this stuff gets, I think we can hold on to the grounding element of this being a real person and a real guy dealing with things that maybe at times are larger than life. But that was certainly the goal. So it's nice to hear that you did resonate with some of the vulnerability and the things that are, at the core, an honest person trying to do the best that he can with what he's got. which sometimes isn't a lot, and I think that's where the humor comes in. But yeah, it was a great ride because it's not something that I often get cast as, and so I really wanted to push myself and stretch out, and you're only as good as the parts around you too, and so to have great people to play off of and really help push me to those limits of where I thought I might be able to go was also a big help from the beginning with Kevin to everyone around me, Cass and Trevor and Alana. It really made a difference. So yeah.
And you're kind of talking about the development, working with Kevin on this. Kevin, I really would love to just kind of hear where this idea came from. How do you kind of come up with the concept of John Cooper, the all the different peaks and valleys that we explore. And you also do a really interesting thing throughout the movie in that, we never really do any true flashbacks, but because of the mockumentary, we're able to explore time in a way that feels, it lends itself to John's journey. So I'd really love to kind of hear like how you kind of came up with this character, the world around him, and kind of putting it through this scope.
Well, the kind of the way I came up with the script and the concept of it was it was almost like a homework assignment, because I've been writing screenplays since I was in high school. I'm in my 40s now. So it was a lot of just like writing with no idea what to do with it. And then I finally had a little bit of traction with the script that I wrote. And I always just wrote with like whatever popped into my head. I never took into account budget or anything like that. So when I started getting a little bit of traction with one of my scripts, it didn't end up going anywhere because everybody was like, that's a lot of money. That's a big budget idea. We don't know who this guy is. Cool story, but maybe later. And it sort of took the wind out of my sails, and I was like, all right, I'll show them. So I tried to channel my inner Kevin Smith, and I was like, Clerks was one of the most influential movies on me. It takes place in essentially one scene for 90% of the movie, just in a convenience store. And it just relied on just jokes and fun characters. So I was like, all right, what sort of story could you tell contained with the fewest set pieces possible? And the idea just came to me one day. I've always loved mockumentary formats. It's such a fun formula for coming up with jokes that you can kind of only do with a mockumentary. So that's just sort of, I was like, okay, mockumentary, what could I do with that? And I've always liked sort of that era of comedies, like R-rated comedies from the 90s and the early 2000s and, the 80s as well, where it's kind of just chaos. And the main characters are kind of bulls in a china shop, and you just let them go loose and you watch the pandemonium. And that's sort of where I came up with the idea and just injected as much craziness as I could, while also being like, how much is this going to cost? So what would be a fun cutaway? All right, somebody in a car. We could put a camera inside of a car if someone's driving an Uber. A quick little shot that looks like a TikTok of somebody walking out of a restaurant. All right, none of this is really going to break the bank.
It just reminded me of a joke, like an LA indie film writer joke that I heard, that someone was like, oh, like they're typing and the writer's like, it was a dark, stormy night. And like, we can't do storms. It's a little too much. It's like, okay, it was night. And like, well, the lighting and the budget for that. And we have to keep the crew overnight. And it's like, it was day. And so that's how the scripts get developed sometimes. And I'm like, that's funny. Anyway.
Yeah, Trevor.
Yeah, I was just going to add, that's something that blew me away with this being an indie shoot, is the set designers and props, like everybody involved in the crew was incredibly resourceful when it came to locations. Like, this is not a lot of locations in the movie. You can feel that, but the cutaways are powerful. And it's like the fact that we did those, I would say I don't remember the schedule, but I feel like it was like 3 days basically that were all the cutaways and things. And we used like that mansion that's at the end of the movie is like hidden throughout the entire movie, and like testimonials and talking heads and like it was just such a smart, it was a savvy schedule on the producer's part, but also like a really hardworking crew that made like one restaurant look like 5 different locations. It was really cool to see.
I love that. I love that when that happens, and I think it also, to your point, it really speaks volumes about the nature of independent filmmaking. Like that's kind of one of the things that's exciting is like when you have those constraints, you kind of start to think outside of the box, and I think that's really infectious in like the best way possible. So in that. So Trevor, I'll keep it on you for being kind of like in that space. You know, your character lives so much of it, as most of these characters here live so much of it in that space. You know, how was it for you were you able to kind of like explore the space in different kind of ways? Like, how was it like having that dynamic? Because you know, we've only got like the same 3 or 4 characters like all throughout. What were some of the challenges that you found, and how'd you work around it?
Oh, it was really just like everything fell into place for me with this movie and where I was at in life. First of all, like just I am a starving actor in my 20s. I had been working for a radio company the year that we filmed this movie. Earlier that year, that ended. I found out that Kevin also worked for the same radio company and also was like kind of on a journey of finding out what was next. So, and I don't want to speak for Kevin's writing, but it does feel like, in a way, I do feel like Clint is a lot of the heart of it's a lot of Kevin is what I'm trying to say. And so it was already so much of what was happening in my life. And then you have this beautiful benefit of it being a mockumentary. So I got to, like, usually when you're living a truthful moment as an actor, there's still that little hacky part of your brain that like is aware that there's a camera in your face, you know? And like, what a beautiful opportunity that feels rare for film, especially to like literally make that a part of your truth. Like I would, part of my preparation, I hope I'm answering your question, but part of my preparation with the spaces would be to not take in the set, not take in the blocking, not take in what my co-stars were doing when I entered, as like just keep it oblivious as much as possible so that I could experience it in real time and look at the cameras and be like, why are you standing there right now? Oh, what is John doing? Like, it was really easy. I don't want to, like, there were challenges. I think sometimes that on the other end of that, when you have to do a gag a bunch of times, can get frustrating. It can get like, why am I not nailing this? You want it to be natural, especially in contrast with all the scenes that do appear really natural. It's like, oh, how am I going to pull off this naked gag or whatever, but come from a truthful place without being too, because when it's a mockumentary, you know, you can, I feel like it also intensifies. The audience is so hyper aware. You want it to feel real. And if you're on board with it kind of being a documentary, when something is hacky or not coming from a truthful face, I think it stands out like a 10-foot pole, you know?
Kind of in a I think a similar way, like something that I'm really interested in is with this story. I think we've kind of alluded to it a little bit, kind of where the heart is, and you know where all this is coming from, and there's a lot going on, right? I think, you know, Clint definitely feels it for John. You know, Jessa is definitely there for Clint, and I think John, he kind of has it, you know, all around. And I think one of the biggest challenges seems to be like, one, getting over himself, but also, you know, I feel like there is kind of this bromance element going on as well with Clint and John. So I think that you know, Jess is not only like the heart of, I think, so much of what's going on, but as you mentioned, Alana, like, you know, there's kind of the voice of reason, you know, kind of playing like a little bit of the audience's perspective. And for me, what I think that gets to is something that's really undervalued a lot, is kind of this idea of like the straight person in an absurd situation, and playing that. You know, talk to us a little bit about like approaching that, with all the chaos, all the goofiness going on. How did you go about these situations, maintaining that kind of perspective?
It's a really good question. I think that for me at least, whether you're working on drama or you're working on comedy, you always, always, always want to find the truth. Kind of like what Trevor was saying, right? Like your job as an actor is always to find the truth in all of it. And I guess the difference is like with comedy, depending on how big it is, it's almost like you have to ground it in truth more. And then if you do that, then like it doesn't matter where you go with it. Like you can go to the moon and the audience will follow you because they believe you. And then once they believe you, then it's like, okay, we're in for the ride, no matter how ridiculous, you know, this gets. And so for Jessa, the way I approached it was like she has a plan for sort of how she wants her life to go. And now circumstances have made it that there's a kink in that, right? And like it might not all go according to plan anymore. And so in her mind, it was like, okay, Clint and I are dating. He's going to figure his career stuff out. We're going to move in together. We're going to get married. We're going to, you know, so it was sort of like there was this trajectory. And then John just throws this giant axe in that whole plan. And she's like, so at first it's more like, okay, he's an inconvenience. How do we get him out? But then it's like, okay, well, she has a heart, right? And so it's like she cares about him too. And then she cares about Clint. And so she's sort of sucked into all these shenanigans while still trying to find a way out. And so it's like there's a lightheartedness of like, all right, let's, you know, I guess today he has a bong and today we're just doing this, you know, so I think she can kind of go with the flow a little bit and be lighthearted, but there's also a through line of truth and of like, there's something I want to get out of this and I need to, while keeping everyone happy, bring everything back down to life and like, you know, come back to reality a little bit and be like, okay, guys, like that's all fun and good, but hey, you still don't have a job, you know? So it was a little bit of that.
And I think kind of in a similar way, there's multitudes of like what you're talking there of like coming back to reality and life not going as planned, which obviously is a theme of the movie. And, you know, Lane, I think it's kind of like the inverse for you is like, I feel like so much of how you approach this character is, you know, even though it's like a mockumentary and even though John himself is kind of, you know, playing it up for the cameras, it doesn't feel like you are playing it up for the cameras. And, you know, as mentioned previous, I think that there's a lot of there's a kind of a lot of different sides and elements to your performance that are going on, and yet you have some of the like funniest slapstick moments. I know like some of the things that got mentioned was like the bowl of cereal is that's all I'll say is like one of the like classic bits. Like that's a perfect like slapstick kind of moment. Talk to us about kind of like navigating a little bit of like that silliness with that much heart.
It's a balance for sure. I love that type of thing. I love that type of gag in real life. So, you know, that to dad jokes sums up my palette for humor. But, you know, I think it goes to the same thing as taking a look at, well, what's happening in that moment. You know, sure, we're trying to reach that gag, but he's, you know, on his course that morning and he's doing everything great and he's gonna have the best day ever and he's ready. You know, I think the line before is, you know, I'm gonna roll up my sleeves and make some money, honey. It's like that's what he's getting ready to do. And, you know, if that's the trajectory I'm on for that moment, that's what the focus is, and trying to nail that and do perfectly. And as with, I think, anybody, when you want something really bad and you're trying really hard to get it right, it's like the bar of something. The harder you squeeze, the more it slips out of your hand. And obviously that's what gets us to the cereal bowl on my lap. And, you know, on the other side, as an actor, it's just fun to execute those things, you know, to be a part of the slapstick humor. Finding ways to make it real is certainly that delicate balance, as you said.
So saying kind of in that lane of no pun intended, sorry. But Kevin, for you, that idea of slapstick. So I'm really curious for a script like this, for a story like this. Did you go into it with kind of like a jokes per minute kind of idea? Did you have kind of like a joke board that you're like, we want to do this, we want to do this, or was it kind of like the story's there, and then we'll just kind of fit some, oh, here's a funny situation. Like, how did you approach this? Because I think that especially something that's really as out there and absurd as this gets, you always bring it back to reality. And so like being able to like have that balance, I'm so curious about how you navigated that.
I think my writing style would probably be like nails on a chalkboard for any like film school teachers, because like I just sort of go at it. It's kind of like when I'm cleaning, I don't just like all right, I'm gonna start in the living room. I'll be like vacuuming, and then I'll see a spot of dust, and I'll run over and dust it, and then I'll notice there's like one dish in the sink, and I'll clean that dish. Then I'll go back to the vacuum, but I'll see a speck on the window, so I'll get the Windex and the paper towels. I am ADD in human form, and that's also my writing process. So when I have an idea that I like and I start going for it, I'll just brainstorm scenes. I'll brainstorm gags. I'll put a through line through everything, and then I'll just start. I'll have like a rough idea, and then I will just write. I don't really do like bullet points. Like I don't do outlines really, and I know that's probably an embarrassing thing to admit, but it's kind of like the only way I can write. So when it came to coming up with bits for John Cooper and like how much of a rhythm I wanted to keep, I think a big thing with comedy and why you don't see all that many of them is I think some people try to get lazy and they go for the lowest common denominator. And that's not necessarily talking about like the style of humor, because there's certainly a bunch of lowbrow shit in the second coming of John Cooper. But I feel like sometimes jokes are a little too obvious. You see them coming a mile away. And I've always looked at it like for comedy, there's a formula. For every joke that lands, you get a point. For every joke that whiffs, you like lose 2 points. Like everything that sucks just really hurts. Like a joke that doesn't land is like a gut punch. It's just like, ugh, you get embarrassed for everybody involved. So I wanted to make sure that the hits kept coming and there were as few clunkers as I could manage to get out. And like I shot for the swung for the fences on some things, and there were some ambitious jokes we went for, and they didn't work, they didn't make it in, but the stuff that made it in, like these guys pulled it off so well. And like it's one thing to just have it on a page, but to be able to pull it off on screen, it took these three just crushing it. And I've seen the movie so many times before. While it was in the editing bay, I was just like, all right, watching this for like the 125th time, and with all the screenings and stuff, and they still get me. Like their performances still get me on just like so much of them. Like, I can't believe I'm still fucking laughing at that.
For sure. And I mean, I think that that's like one of the signs, right? There's kind of a saying of like, if you can't sit in there and watch your movie for like the 200th time, then it's like, don't even start. Like you have to believe in it all the way through. And I think it's really awesome, that it's, we make these kind of movies, obviously for people to see, but at the same time, like it starts with the people that are involved with it. Like we have to feel really good about it. We've talked a little bit about this crew that's with us, but I also know that there is just so much comedic talent that is packed in this movie. Kevin, I want to just hear a little bit about how you got people like Rob Corddry, Brian Posehn, Dustin Yarborough, and Doug Benson involved. What was that process like? Did you just know him, ring him up, and say, hey, "I got this idea"? What was that like?
So I got my start working for the Howard Stern Show back in 2006, So with like the little bit of airtime that I got here and there, I made friends with a few people that were, you know, diehard super fans, and met Rob Corddry a long time ago, and we both like comics and stuff. So every time we saw each other, we would bond over that, and we stayed in touch. And I started working for another radio show, and we used to book him on that all the time. So when I started writing this script, I was like, all right, I'm going to need some interesting people to cut away to talk about John Cooper like he was actually this existing megastar. So I wrote stuff for Rob Corddry. I had done some radio and appearances with Brian Posehn. So I reached out to him, and he was gracious enough to appear in it. I've done Doug Benson's podcast probably like 10 or so times. So we've developed a little bit of a friendship over the years. And Dustin Ibarra, I became friends with probably around like 12 years ago. And the two of us just hit it off immediately and became really good friends. So now every time I write something, there has to be a part for Dustin. And just like, you know, we've spent so much time together. We've done so much podcasting together. Like we've done stand-up together and stuff. So like, it's become very easy to write in his voice. So writing the character of Dubs, the hard partying John Cooper drug dealer, was one of the easier parts of my job.
That's fantastic. It's one of those moments where, like, the first time that character pops on screen, you're just like, oh my gosh, okay, we're in this movie right now. And then every other time that you see Dubs on screen, you're just kind of like bracing. You're like, okay, we're in a different atmosphere now. And in that vein, I would love to hear a little bit from both Trevor and Lane about those scenes, because it's just, I mean, I can imagine like that's so chaotic. There's so much going on, and there, you know, not only in terms of the performance, but you know, Trevor, you talked about like the set, right? Like those sets are chaotic for those scenes. What was it acting against Dustin and those kind of scenes?
I mean, it was just a blast. It is like so much experimentation. A lot of this movie involved improv, which is a miracle for an indie film that's on a tight schedule. But we did get to play around a lot. Just got to, like what you were saying before about like existing in the space. Like that was the ultimate example of that. There was kind of like there was a plan, but there wasn't a plan. You know what I mean? And we would just be pitching things. And man, like I remember that. All the stuff with the horse head, it's all sort of a feint. I was really method, so I have no clue what went down really, but I know there was a horse head involved, and that was awesome. I remember all of that was kind of improv. Man, Dustin's just a genius. I think still like the hardest I laugh at the movie is, and I'm not going to paraphrase his comedic timing, but when his comeback to Alana during the party scene, when she's like taking it all down and you know, just like, when you want your girlfriend to go, like
this entire time. I'm so sorry. This whole conversation, I was thinking about that one line. And anyway,
it's so good. And I remember that it like almost threw us all, like we were. I remember me and Alana kind of like having a moment where we looked at each other, because it was like an ad lib response. Like Kevin wrote something funny, but he I don't know. He just accelerates material. It was, yeah, it's so cool to work with him, and also just really fun to like have fake drug montages. Like, you know, you get, again, I was just very method, I guess, but like, I remember, I'm thinking about the cereal gag, Lane. I think back and I'm like, I didn't find that funny. Like, I remember standing there and just being really like pissed off and annoyed that we had to do it so many times or something. Like, and I'm like, maybe it's because Clint was tired, so I was just experiencing that. I don't know. But whenever Dustin was doing anything, like it just like, it felt like such an alive set, and it was just so much fun. Anyways, I'll pass it to you, Lane, and I'm sorry about the cereal thing.
Oh, well, Dustin's a dream. I mean, he's a consummate professional. And even in between takes, he's throwing out stuff that he's working on for his stand-up, and like rewriting and trying it, and then gets an idea, and then in between the next take, he tries it again. And it's like he's working constantly, whether we're on set, you know, in a scene or in between takes, he's working on what he loves to do. And I think it shows with how, you know, the success that he's seeing is do for sure. The guy is a genius, and it was a treat. Because as I said, this isn't always the realm or world that I get to play in, the parts that I get cast in. So I was definitely riding coattails here for sure, in those fun moments with Trevor and Dustin, because it comes very naturally to both those guys. They're hilarious. So I was riding coattails, having fun.
And Lane, I want to kind of build off of that, with this, we've talked about kind of the different sides of John Cooper. Before this, had you explored like these types of comedic characters in this kind of way, in this type of movie? You mentioned that this is not the typical kind of role for you. Is this something that's a little bit new to you? Is it something that you want to keep exploring?
Yeah, I mean, I like to work, so I'll go anywhere they'll hire me. No, in all honesty, it was new. I mean, I guess, so much of the industry can be dictated by what people see you as, whether it's just visually, to the type of energy you bring into a room when you're, being cast, and also how you see yourself. The comedic world is a very small niche, especially in the improv world, because there's, two big schools here. And of course it doesn't exclude other places, but just in LA, the two big schools, and that's where the comedy comes from. If you're going out for even commercials, like, I don't see Groundlings or UBC on here, I'm not going to see you. They won't even audition you. And so, just like I'm not in musical theater, though I studied some of that when I went to school, it's not the track that I've put my focus on. And in some regards within comedy, you kind of have to say that's what I'm doing. And it's great to see in the reverse too, a lot of people that have made that their track to step out and do more dramatic roles. So it's not that I don't like it or don't see myself in it. I had a great time and would certainly like to play in comedy any chance I get. But yeah, it was certainly a first as far as a lead role in something that is driven by comedy. I always try to find humor in whatever I do, especially if it's dramatic, because, people need to laugh through the heavier, bigger parts, I mean, there's humor in Long Day's Journey into Night, and there should be, because it's human, there should be emotional, strong moments in the second coming of John Cooper. They go hand in hand, I think, but it was a different ballpark for me, for sure.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Well, as we start to wrap things up, we are really excited not only to have this movie at our festival, but also we will be joined in Austin by Kevin. Kevin, before the call, we were talking a little bit about kind of some experiences in Austin. You'll be out there. Anything you're looking forward to in joining Austin? I think you even said that you'd done some live shows out there before.
Yeah, we've done. We used to take the radio show that I was a co-host on. We would take it on the road sometimes, and also do some sort of like ancillary comedy boxing events. So we've gotten weird in Austin, and it's always been a blast. And I think I'm really looking forward to watching this with. Anytime I get to show it and I'm with a new group of people, it's almost like watching it for the first time and seeing what gets bigger reactions with certain crowds, and people coming up to me afterwards and telling me the bits they liked, because there's a lot of stuff in there that's sort of just throwaway lines where it's like, this isn't going to land with everybody, but if it doesn't land, it's not one of those, deducted 2 points. It's just like, if it hits you in the head, it's getting you. And if it misses you, you're not even going to notice it. So like, it's always interesting talking to people where someone will come up to me and be like, yes, finally somebody, that line landed with somebody. and they got it. So I always love hearing that. I mean, the hits are there. There's the moments that, you know, the cereal bowl one is a very popular one. Not with Trevor, but
Hate that. No,
but
I
like
watching it.
it's always fun hearing what lands with people and people being like, you know, I really appreciate it, because not everything needs to be this giant outlandish, like, you know, everything dialed up to 11 joke. There can be these just gentle, like, even if it hits you on the inside, like you laugh interiorly, like those are still fun. Every little joke that hits you and brings those endorphins up. So I always like hearing reports back from a fresh audience.
Well, again, we're so excited to have you there, to be able to showcase the movie, and I'm just thrilled and honored that I had the opportunity to speak with y'all. And again, this is the second coming of John Cooper, which is playing as part of the Comedy Film Festival on Saturday, April 26th at 7:45 at the Galaxy Highland Theater. Thank you to Kevin, to Trevor, to Alana, and to Lane. You know, come on out if you're in Austin, and if not, I'm sure that you'll be able to see the second coming of John Cooper very soon. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of the day.